Greetings, everyone. Welcome to my presentation, Understanding Synchronicity Through a Post-Materialist Perspective. Through this course, the topic of synchronicity has come up multiple times in regard to consciousness studies, and this is a topic that truly fascinates me. Prior to this course, however, I only looked at synchronicity from a spiritual perspective, but I now recognize the importance of scientific methods and how through post-materialism, both sides can unite to further consciousness studies. The aim of this presentation is to offer a post-materialist understanding of synchronicity through bridging ancient spiritual wisdom with modern scientific approaches. Synchronicity often involves a coincidence of separate events that seem connected in a way that makes sense only outside the usual limited ideas of causality. Interestingly, through my research, I experienced a synchronicity. 4 pages into reading Synchronicity Through the Eyes of Science, Myth, and the Trickster by Alan Combs and Mark Holland, I came across this beautiful quote by Novalis. "The seat of the soul is where the inner and outer worlds meet." Just the night before, I was working on my website for my spiritual counseling practice, Soul Beauty Therapeutics, and I added the Novalis quote to my homepage after reading it in Soul Healing by Dorothy Beckfar. Then there it was again, the next morning, reading a book about synchronicity and coming across the same quote. Indeed, it felt like a meaningful moment. Nothing is closer to the heart of the experience of synchronicity than the feeling that the world itself expresses creativity in synchronistic coincidences. Such coincidences often have more the feel of poetry than physics. The concept of synchronicity is most widely associated with Swiss psychologist C.G. Jung and his classic example of sitting with a client who was very Cartesian and rational-minded. She described a vivid dream of a scarab, and then seemingly out of nowhere, a beetle started tapping on the window. To which Jung said, "Here is your scarab." It was a meaningful coincidence to both parties observing the phenomena, as Jung has mentioned how he was hoping that something unexpected would happen to awaken the client. Jung used the term archetypes as meaning concentrations of psychic energy, universal in their essence, which manifests as particular themes or motifs that emerge from the unconscious. He also used the term collective unconscious to refer to the universal collective aspect of this level of the psyche to exert dramatic influence on conscious experience and behavior. Jung believed that the activation of an archetype is what triggers synchronistic coincidence. But prior to Jung, the notion of synchronicity was widely accepted and understood by the ancient world, but by another name. In the late medieval world, the various levels of the cosmos, the earth below, the celestial spheres above, and the human soul were thought to be bound together by mutual harmonies or sympathies. Events in one were reflected in the others. I was introduced to this idea in Craig Chalquist's course on Hermeticism, where I learned about the ancient Egyptians trusting in sympathies. To return to the quote from Novalis, "The seat of the soul is where the inner and outer worlds meet." Dr. Alan Combs writes, "This soul is the essence of those characteristics we regard as the most uniquely human: creativity, intuition, and conscience. It was this soul, this melding of the outer with the inner, to which those in medieval times turned for wisdom, and it was this soul that responded in sympathy to events beyond its immediate surroundings." Harmonies, synchronicities were once trusted mystical phenomena, a guide from the divine or affirmations from the universe that one is on the right path. Hippocrates once said, "There is one common flow, one common breathing. All things are in sympathy." And then we start to see a move from the spiritual to science. The new mechanistic worldview powerfully canceled out the earlier, more comforting view that saw meaningful connections between apparently discrepant events. All this change from a spiritual to a mechanistic worldview meant a change in the fundamental myth with which human beings explain the universe. The older notions of sympathies were reduced to the status of mere superstitions. And here we'll explore some scientists. So we have Paul Kammerer, an Australian biologist who approached meaningful coincidences strictly as objective physical phenomena and believed that such coincidences implied an expanded version of reality. He came up with natural physical law, the law of series, which he published in 1919. This law expressed a special kind of inertia, according to which similar events repeat themselves, spreading like ripples on the surface of water. He developed a complex classification system which emphasized the structural relationship in each coincidence as homologous, analogous, and so on. Kammerer postulated a causal organizing principle which he placed on par with causality itself. This causal factor draws like and like together. It's a special kind of gravity that operates in terms of form rather than in terms of traditional physical variables such as mass and energy. Events similar in form mutually attract each other to yield recognizable series of events. His work was similar to modern chaos theory, but at the time, Kammerer was heavily criticized, even by Jung. His notions were in stark contrast to dominant mechanistic biology of the early 20th century and put him in direct conflict with the leading biologists of his day. Sadly, he took his own life in 1926. And from here we move to David Bohm. David Bohm is a quantum physicist. He envisions the cosmos as a hologram. His vision is radically holistic, allowing for the creation of separate but correlated events beyond the bounds of causality. David Bohm once wrote, "Classical physics provided a mirror that reflected the objective structure of the human being who was the observer. There is no room in this scheme for his mental process, which is thus regarded as separate or as a mere epiphenomenon of the objective processes. Through the mirror of quantum physics, the observer sees himself both physically and mentally in the larger setting of the universe as a whole. More broadly, one could say that through the human being, the universe is making a mirror to observe itself." So his idea of the holographic universe, there's an explicate order that corresponds to the physical world as we know it in day-to-day reality. There's the implicit order, the vast hollow movement, and then the super implicit order acts on the implicit order as a kind of organizing principle, similar to how consciousness acts on the brain. The appearance of meaningful patterns of events such as those seen in synchronicity, patterns which are not connected by local chains of causality, become possible in the holographic worldview. In a hologram, the whole landscape is visually contained or unfolded into each part. The essential wholeness of the hologram is that each part contains or unfolds the whole. On the cosmic scale of Bohm's theory, this means that each part of the world contains the whole of the universe hidden or unfolded within it. This stunning notion, though new to modern science, is well known in the world's mystical poetry. Bohm's vision of the holographic cosmos transcends the traditional distinction between mind and matter, consciousness and physical events. And so it tells us something of the origin of meaning and creativity in our own consciousness, as well as in the objective universe without. They are the same. The deep well of the super implicit, breathes forth meaning which might rightly be termed mythic into the whole world of physical and mental reality. Moving on to Rupert Sheldrake. Rupert Sheldrake is a British biochemist. He proposed the idea of amorphic fields. A morphic field is a kind of habit in nature. Each time a particular form occurs, it is more likely to occur again, whether non-organic, such as an atom, a molecule, or a snowflake, or living, such as a flower, a bird, or a human. Sheldrake also believes that morphic fields influence patterns of brain activity associated with thought or behavior. We can see a linkage between morphic fields and synchronicity in the often celebrated fact that two or more scientists or mathematicians may make very similar and independent discoveries at almost the same time. There is much in Sheldrake's theory that makes it compatible with Bohm's notion of the implicit order. Both Bohm and Sheldrake are holistic in their approach, and both theories assume non-locality. The experience of synchronicity gives us the sense of being on the receiving end or downstream of a much greater process, a process that has not only breadth but also a vertical or value dimension. The breadth is the size of the process in terms of the numbers of persons and events it touches. The dimension of value is experienced subjectively as a sense of meaning, purpose, or wonder, in Jung's terms, numinosity. And that was from Alan Combs' book on page 39. Moving to Gary Schwartz, who was a guest in our class. Schwartz's innovation in creating the 5 additive criteria test, or FACT, provides a gateway to bridging science with spirituality. His method incorporates the scientific method to understand synchronistic experiences, and if the 5 criteria have been met, then the data must be accepted as true. He maintains that even if the results are far out, they are worth being studied, and this empirical evidence is pushing new research techniques. Using the scientific method to validate numinous experiences is groundbreaking in the field of consciousness studies. Furthermore, Schwartz coined the term supersynchronicities, which he defines as 6 or more meaningful events. And a supersynchronicity is something I would like to further develop. I have outlined my own experience of a supersynchronicity, and I don't have time to share it here, but it's something I would like to write more in depth about in the future. And here we move to the potential for future research. There's still so much to learn about the mystical phenomena of synchronicity. Our understanding of the cause of synchronicity and its meaning in our lives is limited by our limited understanding of physics and also the brain. But I think that Gary Schwartz's idea that the future development of universal sciences is a great direction to head in. In the face of climate change and war that separates humanity, what is needed is an open and interdisciplinary exploration in this area, as it might lead to the development of embodied transformative pathways of spiritual flourishing in an increasingly disenchanted world. Recognizing the interconnection between the inner landscape to that of the cosmos is a powerful realization, and through post-materialist perspective, embracing the spiritual with science feels like an important step for humanity. And I'd like to close with this last quote. And if we are to embrace the metaphysical assumption that consciousness desires to witness, behold a unique world in a unique way, then it does not judge the self or the world as inferior or in need of escape. Rather, it sees them as fascinating in their own right. To enact this is what it is like, is to be enchanted by participating in an exchange with consciousness itself, and in return, appreciating a world, a unique world, in a unique human way. Here are my references. Thank you all so much for witnessing my presentation. Have a beautiful day.